Some of you might be wondering why I never followed up with this video. That's because I eventually changed my mind about giving a shit, because I would rather not run myself into the ground and be a second life of Rio. I don't give a shit about Warframe as much as I used to because I've found better games to occupy my time, and at this point most of the people still making Warframe content are only here because that's how they make money.
The next station will be Fortuna 69.
Those of you who like my writing and fictional work such as this, and those of you who are familiar with Warframe community artist TBGker, will be happy to hear that I'll be writing for her as part of her Warframe project. If that interests you, then I strongly recommend you look at her work on Twitter. Anyways, hello. Some of you out there may have thought that I straight up died after uploading this, considering how less frequently I've been making videos. I'm fine. It's just that I've been enjoying other games, and you probably have a good idea what I've been mostly playing for the last few months. Some of you might remember that I dropped Warframe before out of complete anger, and that's something I've never denied, because literally everyone has done the same at some point in their time playing Warframe. Do I hate the game? Honestly, not exactly. I still like the base concept of the game, as well as the in-game universe, but the actual gameplay in addition to the developers is what sort of kills the vibe for me. Similar to how I like the universe of League of Legends but refuse to play League of Legends, I like the universe of Warframe but don't really have any motivation to play. Unlike years ago, I honestly don't feel particularly angry about Warframe. However, I have trouble using a single word or sentence to describe it. I could say that I feel disgusted, because DE violated their own username rules by permanently banning one of their Russian players over an inappropriate username despite having offered to pay for a name change, even though Sabuchi briefly lost access to his own account over inappropriate usernames and got it back eventually. Has anything really changed over the last few years? Of course not, because if it wasn't obvious already, DE doesn't care unless you have money or an audience on YouTube or Twitch. I could say that I feel bored, because as someone who doesn't like Railjack and didn't really care about DMOs or Necromix, I'm still waiting for literally any new information related to Duviri Paradox or the new war to be announced or released, and in that time spent waiting I've been playing other games that are slowly but surely making me give little to no fucks about Warframe. Has anything really changed over the last few years? Of course not. We're almost 30 updates into Warframe, and despite the high amount of time that Warframe has been running, it feels like a bad joke in my opinion. I could say that I feel exhausted, because Warframe has been running for almost 8 years now, and yet we're still in the vicious cycle of waiting several months for new content that can be completed in less than a week, and half the time the new content is broken on release. We didn't get test servers until literally last year, and even then, they've only been used 3 times. I would like to remind you that when the community said that Demos Arcana needed more time in the test server, DE pushed it out anyway because I guess the test server is pointless. I would also like to remind you that DE pushed Railjack out in a very unfinished state before the holidays despite the fact they'd been hyping it up for years, even though they did almost the same thing with Kuvaliches before that. Obviously, it's not all bad. The recent Railjack retrofit update actually makes Railjack somewhat decent to play now, even though it still has its share of bugs and still is absolutely nothing like what DE promised in TennoCon. I understand that not everybody feels or thinks the same way that I do, but here's the thing. Now that Tencent owns DE, obviously Warframe isn't going to die overnight like Lawbreakers or some other equally obscure game. That being said, Warframe's biggest priority right now in my opinion should be the terrible way it handles introducing new players into Warframe. The new player experience which DE spent several months working on was nothing more than a new intro cinematic for Warframe and reworked quest. Besides that, Warframe does an exceptionally bad job at explaining stuff to new players, which is why even now new players have to either keep looking up answers on Google, the wiki, or have friends in-game carry them. In my opinion, it does not matter how good or polished your game is. If it can't even get the task of introducing a new player into Warframe and how everything works right, you're going to have less people be interested in Warframe overall. Games are supposed to be fun, not a job. If somebody has to keep a Google tab open for the first 100 hours of playtime just to understand how everything works, then you're doing a shit job at presenting your game. Warframe is no exception, because Warframe is a game, not a job. But I digress. I legitimately do not think that Warframe will just magically disappear or die anytime soon, but rather just be in permanent life support until the player base moves on to something better, grows up, or just stops caring. As I've said before, Warframe has a problem with retaining player interest in the long term, which is why content creators leaving is nothing new and why player activity usually only spikes when big updates are released before going back down. I'm going to stick with just writing stuff because I'd rather cut off my balls with rusty hedge clippers than touch Railjack again. Or I'll upload myself playing Final Fantasy XIV while drunk. I don't know. Thank you for watching.